as you listen to this teaching by Pastors Ralph and Joanne Hone. We hope you'll enjoy it and learn some practical ways to walk into the awesome life God has for you. For more information and for more free teaching, visit our website, www.tapintothesource.com.
Well, I'm really excited to introduce to you today Tina Konkin. And we've known each other for coming up to 3 years now. We met through Mary Hudson and just hit it off. And she's a fellow Canadian. Yes!
Hey.
She's a fellow Canadian, yes. And actually, she even spent some of her childhood in Winnipeg. She's from British Columbia now, but anyway, so we just hit it off. I've loved her spirit. But often when it's a friend, I forget to introduce the depth of who she really is. So I'm going to just read off something here. She says, she is an author, relationship expert, counselor, and conference speaker. She's facilitated hundreds of seminars for youth, adults, couples, and families for over 30 years and has been helping heal the brokenhearted through her story of abuse and abandonment. Tina has touched thousands of lives by demonstrating that your past doesn't have to control your future. She's the founder and director of R3 Lifeline and facilitates the Intensive Relationship Lifeline and the Couples Retreat, a sought-after motivational speaker and a believer in living above the line. You know, she's also had some amazing opportunities, actually, coming up shortly. Her whole ministry is being featured on Dr. Phil. They use her as a resource, have for a number of years. She's going to be on there. And she's speaking at a conference. Can I tell this? Okay. She's speaking at a conference this week, right? She's in Miami, so she's coming through. You know, she likes to hobnob like with lower level people. She doesn't, aim very high. So the other main speaker is President Bush. Okay? So, you know, I tell her to aim just a little bit higher, but anyhow. So it's really amazing where God is taking her, what God is doing. And I know you guys are going to be absolutely blessed. So I want you to take a look at this video. Then I want you guys to give her a big source welcome to Tina Konkin.
Your life is not who you are. It's how you react to your reality, not your circumstances.
There's nobody perfect, so you gotta work on your stuff and then come together. That's what's gonna give your relationship the best advantage.
You get really in touch on who you are and what has happened in your life,
and basically turning my negative story for most of my growing up life into a positive thing.
To get this stuff dealt with now, to get it dug up and dealt with now, is better than when our kids are 13, 15, 20.
Coming in, you think, well, I got no ghosts to exercise, everything is good. But you come in here and through the seminar, it's spectacular the way that it's laid out and the way that it slowly peels back the layers of your onion to the point where you can feel good about who you are.
I knew I had my problems, but then I kind of have lived so long covering them up that I was like, oh, I'm fine, like I'll be fine. And then just going through the processes that they give you, it just makes you realize that like life's not worth living hiding behind things.
So move with us. Get out of your head and go to your heart. Make that transition. That might be a short distance, but it may be the hardest trip you'll ever take, yet the most beneficial.
I'm at a loss. I feel like a different person than 4 days ago.
I believe I changed as a mother, as a sister, as a friend, as a daughter, as a granddaughter.
And this is going to help me, it's going to help me with my friendships, it's going to help me with my marriage, it'll help me with my kids, and it'll help me in business.
Even if the relationship didn't work from here, this was life-changing for me.
and today I feel lively. I have a piece of me back that I had lost a long time ago.
But thankfully, I think the relationship's going to work out, and I'm quite happy about that.
For the first time in a long time, I can honestly say that I'm happy.
I came in here with very little hope, kind of as
we're at the last straw, and I leave here completely consumed with hope, and not only for our marriage, but for my children, for my life. And I've been equipped with the tools to make myself the best woman that I can be, so therefore I can bring that to the table in a marriage.
I think I've honestly found the man that I always knew that he could be. It just took the right people in the right situations to bring him to figure out that he's an amazing person. And he needed to find that.
It might sound cheesy, but I think I fell in love with him all over again. You know, for the first time in 20 years, I saw that man again. I saw the man I fell in love with. And it made me realize that as unhappy as I've been, he's been unhappy too, and neither of us wanted to be in that place anymore. And this whole weekend has given us the tools and the confidence to go forth and make sure that never happens again.
All right. All right. Thank you. I just did a stop here. I've been on the road for a little bit now, and as much as we try really hard, I've now taken it as a good thing. I'm going to just dump these in here. That's okay if we've got an overflow. But I'm starting to judge people and judge churches by the size of the rocks they provide. And you're going to know what that means in a little bit. But according to this, you're a very healthy church. All right. Not sure it's going to have the power in my presentation that I need, but you're healthy if this is a judgment or a prophetic word here of the rocks you have. Let me just go through my product just really quick, just that way I get it out of the way. My husband passed away 3 years ago, Christmas Day, and he was diagnosed with cancer in 2009, and December of 2009, and was given 4 months to live. He lived healthy for 4 years because he basically had a conversation with God and said, my legacy's not in place, my family's not in order, and I know that I have been meant to live and not die to proclaim the goodness of the Lord. And he said, and I don't care if that happens from heaven or if that happens from here, but I shall live through legacy. And he had that conversation, and I, being the wife that I was, I thought that when you get a diagnosis from the doctor, you believe God to heal you. But if he takes you home, I looked at my husband and I said, it's a win-win for you. If he heals you, it's for us. You know, Paul said, it's better that I go up there, but it's better that I stay here for you. And my husband went on that path, and he said, Lord, I don't mind coming home. He was only 48. He said, I don't mind coming home, but not until my assignment and my race is done here. And here are the things that need to happen before that happens. And I went on this thing, honey, that's where you quit everything and you live like you're dying. You know, that's when people, they make up their bucket list. Everything you didn't do until they tell you you've got this long to live, right? That was my theory. He had a whole different theory. He had, no, I shall live from here or from there. I'm either going to be in that cloud of witnesses watching the vision fulfilled, or I'm going to be here working it. And that was his attitude, because to him it was win-win, but he wanted to live. And him and God sat down, and he sat down, and he asked God to sit with him and said, let's go through the bucket list my wife wants. That's all I asked for. I said, give me your bucket list. And he started listing all the things that needed to be accomplished in order for the legacy to be in place, so that this would go from one generation to the other. What's this? The healing of the brokenhearted. Our mission is to heal relationships one broken heart at a time. That's our purpose, that's our mission, that's our vision, that's the whole thing. And that we were called to even before we got together. I always knew God had called me to heal the brokenhearted. And him the same. I worked with children when we met. I'm actually a ventriloquist by trade in my children's work. And I still do that every once in a while. Don't get any ideas? Yeah. When I can't talk, I let him talk. I bring the dummy and then he gets away with it. And I get to say really bold things, and then blame him. Actually, I've got to tell you this funny story about my dummy. I got so good. God gave me the gift. I never learned how to do it, but because he called me to children's ministry, I said, I'm alone and my yellow Honda. We need something to make the children laugh. It was always in my heart to make children laugh because in my home there was no laughter. But it was Winnipeg, one of the churches I went to, a big church. You would know that church. And I'd gotten so good that I could throw my voice. And so the dummy was always in the back of the church or in the back of the stage, and he would get brought out. Well, before he'd come out of his suitcase, you would think you could hear the dummy speaking out of the suitcase, right? Now, it's illusion. But a good church member, a woman, on the board, after the evening was over at 8:30, called an emergency board meeting. And I got a call at the home I was staying at 11 p.m. that night saying I couldn't continue the children's 1-week program every night. There were hundreds of kids there. And I said, why? And then I shared, I said, did you see how many kids got saved last night? Because it was a community thing. They really brought in a lot of kids. And she says, well, because it's been brought to our attention that you with the puppet is okay, but your lips didn't move, and that wasn't so bad. But then we noticed that, your voice was coming from another part of the building, which told us that must be demonic. And I went, okay, well, what if maybe I promise not to do that and I'll move my lips? Could we continue, And I said, and where did this idea come from? And they shared about the woman who had watched the movie. Oh, what was that movie where the dummy came alive? Anyways, it was a very horror movie. Chucky, that's it. I've never seen the whole thing, but after that I went to see it, just a little bit to see what she was talking about. And my response to that was, why was she watching a movie like that? Like, why was she watching a movie like that? Really. So the Lord didn't tell her it was demonic. It was the demonic movie that told her it was demonic. Anyways, that's my story on Winnipeg. I have lots of stories on Winterpeg, but that's the one that first time I ever really was threatened to be kicked out of a church. So, but let me go through my product. I was talking about my husband. So on his bucket list was this book. Now, we had started this Love, Sex, and Money book, and all it did was take away love, sex, and money every time we tried to finish it. It was like wallpapering in the old days. If you could wallpaper together as a couple, if you guys are old enough to remember wallpapering, your marriage could survive. Well, we gave up wallpapering together. Well, the book had the same effect. We kept putting it down because we were fighting so much, right? And it just wasn't happening. So that was on the top of his bucket list, his book, our book, written together, had to get finished. And I know you know this couple, so it's 2 books in one, okay? And it's back there. And then the other thing that was on his list was a set of DVDs with our teaching on relationships. And we got that done. And by the way, both of these, though he lived 4 years healthy, unprecedented to the doctors. They didn't know how he was doing it. They didn't know how he had energy and no pain. But that was a God thing. This man was a man with a mission, and he wanted his set of DVDs. So there's DVDs there on Love, Sex, and Money. And this one here is a meditation CD on forgiveness, the Garden of Forgiveness. It's not teaching on forgiveness. It is actually taking you through a process of forgiveness. Some people that have gone through our program and others have written and have said, if it weren't for that, I'd lose it. One man who his wife had been unfaithful. He said every night before he could go into his bed, he needed to sit and relax and close his eyes and remember again why he was fighting for his marriage. And it was during that meditation of forgiveness, 1 year every night, he wore out the CD. So it is a meditation. It's not something you want to play in your car. All right, let me just get really started. Yeah. And my message today is on this. I'm wearing the whole thing, okay? I'm wearing the bracelet. I'm wearing this here. My kids are still in Vancouver. My adult children are in Vancouver. And they help the homeless and those to give dignity. And the downtown Vancouver east side, they provide a place where people can connect and be part of a family. And so they do family dinners. It's not called a food line, it's a family dinner, and they do a games night. They have tremendous, but hand stamp these, and it says, I get to. Hand stamp these. And those are the men that are doing it there. And it gives them a bit of a job. So that's what we've partnered with. But this is my message today, I get to. See, in the last 4 years of Ron's life, he realized that everything he did here on this earth until God took him home was I get to. There was nothing about a day that he didn't get to do. From taking out the garbage to being on the wrong exit on the freeway of LA, because we live in Orange County now. And you take on a wrong exit, it could set you off an hour, okay, in that city. And I remember one day we were going somewhere and we needed to be there at a certain time, and he took the wrong exit. And he went straight into what a man does, frustration on the road, sometimes even road rage. But all of a sudden he took that exit, and I looked at him and I saw the look on his face, and he goes, don't say it. I get to take the wrong exit. This is a part of the LA we would have never seen. And I said, yes, it is. And the funniest story I've got about I get to is, wives are really good at throwing things back at you. You're trying to improve, and we just like to throw it back at you. Children do the same. Yeah. And so I'm doing my spring cleaning. You know what that's like? Getting those closets cleaned and everything that you haven't worn for a year, you decide should go to someone else maybe, or your children have outgrown things. And so I'm just on this, I'm feeling good. And I decide to go into my husband's man cave, the garage. He loved his garage. And his garage was his sacred place. And I didn't have much respect for that sacred place. I have to confess. And so I'm doing this spring cleaning, and I'm filling these boxes and bags, and I'm taking one at a time, and he sees one bag come in, and then he sees a box come in, and he says nothing, and I'm in a good spirit, I'm singing, and all of a sudden, by the third or fourth bag, he said, what are you doing? Why are you piling all this garbage here in the garage? And I said, well, I'm just cleaning out the closets, and and he goes, stop. And he has that voice, where it's like, just so disappointed in me. So, like, how could you be disrespectful like that? He doesn't say all those things. I can just see it, And so I just said, you have a way of just killing joy. And I slammed the garage door and went back upstairs, and didn't quite have the same joy cleaning out the next closet. But before I went back upstairs, I ran right back into the garage, and I said, by the way, you get to clean this garage. You know why? Because you have one. And do you know how many people around the world don't have a garage? They don't even have a home to clean their closets. And you get to have this garage, and you get to clean it. And he just looked, and he went, okay. And we started laughing. But truly, in all honesty, this is how he lived, because he knew the alternative was that if he didn't stay on track, and he didn't keep, there's a mind switch, a brain switch when you go from I have to I get to. I get to share the gospel. I get to sit here on a Sunday morning. Do you know it's a privilege? There's many places you couldn't. be free to sit here. I get to be a parent even on those days that you think, God, whose child is this? But you get to be an influence. You get to have a voice. You get to lay hands and heal and see God's healing. You get to be part of this body. You get to go to work if you have a job. You get to let your petitions be known. And whenever I think of being, we've even got the mugs now, I get to. Whenever I think or want to go, woe is me, I realize, you know what, I get to meet President Bush tonight at 5:30 in a private reception with just the speakers. This is a funny story. I didn't know he was going to be there till 2 days ago. And my assistant's going through my stuff and making sure everything's in my calendar, and she opens up the list of speakers and, you know, where I need to be at what time, and she's going to film it. She goes, Tina, do you know where you're speaking next week? And I said, well, yeah, on Sunday I'm at the Source, and then, you know, I'm speaking on Tuesday morning at this Fairfax Financial Holdings. It's a secular thing, but the president's a Christian, and he really wants us to be a source because there's a lot of relationship problems in the company. And so the only people that are there are the 55 presidents from around the world of this company, and it's a Canadian company from Toronto. So I said, sure. I said, I know where I'm speaking. He goes, really? He says, did you know who the other keynote is besides you? And I said, no, probably some financial people. I don't know. She goes, former President George W. Bush, the 43rd President of the United States. I said, are you reading that somewhere? She goes, no, he's kind of like right above your picture. I'm going, you are kidding, right? And she goes, no. And I said, oh, well, no, I didn't know that. So as it turned out, I asked if I could get there a little bit early because my flight wasn't going to arrive there leaving it really tight. So I will be slipping out. I'm not being rude, but I will be slipping out as soon as the service is over. Well, I want to share with you today just something really short, but I hope you take it to heart. It was over, I don't want to age myself, but it was nearly 30 years ago where I ended up at a real crossroads, and it wasn't a marriage problem at the beginning. It really was a parenting problem. And I couldn't find help. At the age of 8 years old, when she was 8 years old, I began to reject her and push her away. Didn't know why, couldn't explain it. But it got really bad, and then it started affecting our relationship. I went to a counselor after finally it got revealed during different things. Went to a counselor and I said, I need help. And he tried to delve into my past and being the good Bible call. Oh, by the way, I was the children's pastor at the time, that I was rejecting my own child. So you can imagine the shame and the guilt the devil just waved in front of my face as I would speak to, a couple hundred kids every Sunday and encourage their parents and do all that. And in the meantime, I had a hard time living under the same roof with my 8-year-old. By the time she was 9, it was really becoming a huge effect, and that's when I went to the counselor. And he wanted to delve into my past. And I lasted 3 sessions, and the 3rd session, I said, I don't believe that going into the past is biblical. Because the Apostle Paul said, forgetting the things that are in your past and moving forward. And I was very religious about it, very just spiritual about it. And he looked at me and he goes, well, it's evident you really don't want to go there. And I said, no, I have a today issue, not a yesterday issue. I've dealt with that and I've moved on. And he said, well, you let me know how that works out for you. And I left, and I never went back. It was another year where things got so bad that I physically couldn't hug her, I couldn't touch her. And my sister came to me and she said, Tina, she said, there's a program coming to Vancouver from Texas. And now you know his name today, and we're a resource for him today. And on Tuesday, because I can't be there because I'm with President Bush, no, just kidding. So my partner, Margaret Aubin, is going to be at the Dr. Phil show on Tuesday, and she'll be going on stage there. So while I'm here, but it was his program before he was Dr. Phil. It was a 5-day intensive that I ended up going to, and had a real, what I call born-again experience, because I was raised in the church, and I was 5 years old when I accepted Jesus. It was very real, and I've never departed. So this thing that happened in that 5-day intensive was so life-transforming for both my husband and I, because I dragged him with me, because I was scared of going alone. Was so life-transforming that even though at the time he was on the church staff and I was the children's pastor and he was an associate pastor, we looked at each other at the end of 5 days and we said, this is what we want to do for the rest of our lives. And that is heal the brokenhearted. We saw people that had carried baggage like I had for years. We saw people's relationships facing divorce that were there for closure change in a matter of 5 days. We saw the hearts that were so hardened come open. And we'd never seen it in all the years of ministry in that way. And we began to train with Dr. Phil's partner at the time. And we trained in what I now call my rock ministry. And I say you're healthy because these rocks are supposed to be big. All right? What do these rocks represent? These rocks represent the hardness of heart. Okay? So obviously your heart's not very hard. But it does fill up quite a bit of your heart if this were, okay, to be your heart. If this vase were to represent your heart, it's the hardness of the heart that causes divorce, Jesus said. Now, divorce can mean marriage, but divorce can also mean separation in any relationship. Because if you look at any separation in any relationship, it has to do with the hardness of our heart. Where does the hardness of the heart come from? Well, for me, it came from a very young child when I was rejected, when I heard that I should have never been born. And that's what the counselor was trying to get at, that I wouldn't go there. But my heart hardened and didn't trust people, because if your own mother doesn't want you, who would? Well, then the hardness of the heart came even more when I began to resent the fact that I had to perform to be liked. So I became a performance-based Christian, never for God. I got grace from the time I was 5. That was really good. Even though I grew up in a very legalistic Pentecostal church, I never got the legalism in my heart. I knew what grace was. I knew that Jesus loved me no matter what. The first Bible story I ever heard when I gave my life to Jesus at 5 years old was that Jesus protected the children. That's what I needed. By 5, I already knew I wasn't protected. By 5, I'd already suffered abuse, both sexual and physical. That was by 5 when I first was introduced to Jesus. So when I heard, and my story is that children were to be seen and not heard, and they were to be seen as perfect. They didn't sit at an adult table for Sunday dinner. Those were children. They were put to the side. And can you imagine on that flannel board, as I saw the picture unfolding, as I saw the story, already at 5 I had a knot in my stomach when I saw Jesus' bodyguards. That's what I thought they were. And he was talking to all these people that were so important. But his bodyguards saw children being loud and coming towards him as they were trying to go to the most important man on that scene. And when I saw that, my little tummy just, those kids are going to get a beating right now. Because they're being heard. because they're disturbing a very important adult meeting. Did I tell you I was 5 when I had all those feelings, and I still remember it? But then out of nowhere, the story changed. And Jesus looked over, and he saw those children, and he said, "Stop. Bring them to me." And then the next picture was they sat on his knee, and they sat all around him, and he talked to them. And he looked out at the crowd, and he said, "Listen, this is what the kingdom of God is made of." And from that day and that picture, whenever I was abused or whenever I was hurt, I would go back to that picture, and I would be part of those children where he watched us and allowed us to play. That became a fantasy world that I lived in till I was the age of 12. And that vision came back to me when God called me to do children's work while I was in Bible school. I thought, I've been here before. I've seen these kids before. Yeah, I used to see them between the ages of 5 and 12 when I would go to that place that I had created, a place in heaven where we could play and be with that man they named Jesus. That was the love story I had. So I never had a legalistic this way. But relationships this way, I didn't trust. I had to perform to be liked, if I could be liked. And so I had a lot of hardness of heart. I had resentment, which was a big boulder, not these little ones. But it doesn't matter how little the rocks are, because if I were to pick this jar up, I couldn't hold it for very long. It's heavy, no matter what. It doesn't matter how many rocks or how small they are or their size. It's heavy, very heavy. And I can't hold it up. I don't work out. Okay, so I'd have to put it down very quickly. But if I were to take this, which is plastic, it has no weight, and I were to put just a few rocks in here, just a couple more, just to be human, and I were to hold this, and I were to ask you, what do you think that weighs? It really weighs nothing. And I could tell you, look, I can hold this up. There's absolutely no problem holding this up. But now it's been up for about 30 seconds, and I'm starting to feel something here. I don't work out. So I'm starting to feel something here. What do you think if I held this the whole time in the next 25 minutes that I'm going to speak? If I were to hold this the whole time, do you think I might experience some pain? I'm already starting to. And now I'm starting to feel it's going here. I don't work out. I don't even stretch. I should. Because you see, here's the thing. You don't have to come from a place of abandonment, abuse, rejection to have hardness of heart, to have resentment, unforgiveness, gossip. That all hardens your heart, and our heart was not meant or intended to carry that. See, it's not how many rocks are in your heart. It's how long you carry it. These walls here that are around your heart, that have hardened your heart, for whatever reason, don't have to be for big reasons. It could just be that one time in your childhood, you haven't resolved that somebody said you'll never amount to anything. And that has taken root. And your foundation has been built on you'll never amount to anything. Or who would want you as a mom? Hope you're never a mom. Any words like that the devil has roots to, he has access, he has legal rights if you don't resolve it. See, he was able to touch my rejection and then turn it into rejecting my own daughter. Why? Because when she turned the age of 8, she started to look like me, act like me, and everything I didn't like about me, it was like looking at her in the mirror. I avoided mirrors. I didn't like me. And I started seeing it in her. And so my unresolved stuff that I thought when I shared to the counselor was resolved was not resolved. And because of that, it comes back up. You have hardness of heart that's not resolved. You have unforgiveness in your heart. You have anger in your heart. You have resentment. And all those things that are of the world of the flesh, that was not intended for our heart. Jesus died for all that stuff. And so when we carry it, we give legal rights to the enemy to attack, to deceive, to lead us astray. We suddenly don't get to witness anymore. We become the recluse. He's able, the rocks are guilt and shame. He works those ones really well. And he uses the word. He did with Jesus too. And so I say you're a healthy church because your rocks are really small. But how long have you been carrying them? Think about that today. You get to resolve these. You get to put them under the blood. You get to let them be a testimony. Today, for me, my rocks are my testimony. And the Bible says that they will overcome by the blood of the Lamb. They will overcome who? The enemy. By the blood of the Lamb and the power, the word of their story, of their testimony. So my story of pain today and rejection is actually my testimony. But it wasn't before. I hid it. That's why I didn't want to go there with the counselor. It was hidden, not resolved. Forgetting the past means the past has been taken care of, so you don't have to live in it. It doesn't have to be part of your future. And we did start this ministry of healing the brokenhearted, healing relationships one broken heart at a time. And it's amazing where God has brought us from that time on. But today I want to share from John 4. And just before I do that, will you put up my family picture? Because this family picture wouldn't be there if it weren't. Wow, that's really big. Okay. Wouldn't be there if we hadn't taken care of our rocks. My husband asked me to never stop sharing this story, but about 14 years into our marriage, 12, 14 years into our marriage, my husband was unfaithful. And we have helped and seen more infidelity healed than ever before. The most hurtful part of our infidelity wasn't that we wanted to restore, but that the people around us, our church leaders at the time, took me to one side and said they would save the ministry if I would divorce him. That was their answer. And they gave me the scriptures that gave me the biblical right to do so. I had 2 young children at the time. And I think it was the first time I walked away from a private pastoral meeting with 2 pastors sitting there. And I said, you in the ministry can go to hell, and I'm going to see if God will restore my marriage. So, had we not made that decision, by the way, that same pastor later, many years later, not that many years later, about 5 years later, called my husband and said, can I meet you for coffee? And he said yes. And he held some rocks in his hands. And he said, Ron, these are my rocks. I need to ask you to forgive me. Ron said, I forgave you a long time ago. And he said, I'm leaving my wife. Had an affair with the chairman of our board. And Ron said, I get that. How can I help? And for a time period, his marriage didn't restore. But Ron always stayed a friend to him. He was rejected by all, and no church would let him in. He was a lead pastor of a very big church. I say that to say that Jesus heals because of his compassion for us, not our rocks, not our failures. But I look at that family photo, and I think if we had allowed these rocks to continue to destroy, because Satan had access to our hearts. That's how we ended up where we ended up. There were things in our marriage that weren't right. And he used it. And he will use whatever, he's strategic. The enemy has a plan for your life. But greater is he that is in you if you let him. Right? So I look at this picture and I think, who wouldn't be in that picture if we hadn't healed? If we hadn't made a decision to not make a decision while we were unhealthy. So you should never make decisions when you're unhealthy. Why? Because high emotion is low intelligence. High emotion is low intelligence. So when your emotions aren't healthy, they win out every time. Have you ever done anything in anger that turned out good? Have you ever done anything in unforgiveness or revenge that had a good result except in the moment? Oh, it's a good feeling in the moment when you think you hit them. Got you. And then what? Then the devil comes along and says, oh, a good Christian. Wow, you really lost it there, didn't you? So first he helps you lose it and gives you every reason you should be angry and just go off. And I'm not talking about righteous anger here. And then he fills you with guilt and shame for having done it. It's a no-win with him. That's why resolving this, by the way, the rocks also separate us from this relationship. And I love when Jesus said, it's because of the hardness of the heart that Moses allowed divorce. And we figured if we built our ministry on that, let's look at the rocks. Let's get rid of this. And then we can have healthy marriages and healthy homes, healthy churches, healthy brothers and sisters, healthy parents and children. This is what's in between us. And I look at that and I thank God for that morning, the morning after I found out that my husband had been unfaithful. I hadn't slept all night. My eyes were bloodshot, and I was an ugly mess. If anybody's ever been there, you know the pain of that kind of betrayal. By the way, we didn't have a bad marriage. We had a few rocks. But we both, looking back at our timeline, said that was the best year of our lives. So how did it happen? Because Satan only needs a little rock. Doesn't need much. And he can build on it. So it wasn't like we had this tumultuous, awful. It wasn't like that. But you see, because we made that decision, and that morning as I looked in the mirror, and I thought, I'm a mess. God, what am I going to do? And then I start, God, how could this happen to us? God, do you know who we are? Like, we're in ministry. We've seen hundreds of people saved and healed. Like, God, I was informing God, of our position and our status and who we were, and how could this have happened? How could he have done this? Now I'm looking at him, and I look, and I hear the voice of the Holy Spirit very clearly. And God says, don't you dare ask how he could have. Don't be a victim. I went, well, sure feel like a victim right now. He said, the only question I want you to ask that person that's looking at you in the mirror is, what part did you play in it? Because when you're one, as a husband and wife are, there is nothing she does or he does that isn't done together. And I just went, okay, hit me while I'm down. Not only did he betray me, now you're blaming me. And I looked again and I heard that sweet voice of Jesus that I've known since I was 5 years old. This is not condemnation. This is when you can take responsibility and accountability for your rocks, not his, mine. Then I can begin to heal. And when I look at that picture, what wouldn't be there today is, first of all, my 12-year-old daughter.
She was 9 when that picture was taken 2 months before Ron passed away. That portrait wouldn't be there. And if you think about your life as building family portraits and your story, who's in your family portrait? Because of decisions you've made or not made. And 2 months before he passed away, we took that. There was only one picture after that, and that was in the last few hours of his life. And all of those people that are in that picture were sitting on that bed with him. And Ron and I had a moment just before that. As we sat on that bed, releasing him to heaven, we wondered, what if 20 years before that, we hadn't made that decision? Would his children have been on that bed? Would I have been? Probably not. And we realized what a good God we served, because that morning in the mirror, I decided not to be a victim. But the 12-year-old was because we moved after that time. We moved away. And I was working with the downtown people where my eldest children are now working in Vancouver. And we ran low-income housing, and it was just amazing the work that God did through us at that time of our biggest hurt. Here we were helping people that had such just no family. We were becoming a family to them. And she was a single mom at 3 months old. She was being taken away. And I said, well, look, I didn't hear post-traumatic disorder. I heard postpartum. I said, I'll help. I didn't want her to go into the system. I knew the mom was a good mom. I said, I'll help. Well, within 2 weeks, the decision had to be made of either she was going in the foster system or we were willing to step up and adopt her. Well, today she's my lifeline. She's 12 today, and she makes me get up in the morning. I don't have a choice. I don't have a choice. I'm still a mom. So she has been tremendous as far as our grieving together, but she really gives me reason to get up every day and do life, not just ministry. And the other that wouldn't be there would be my daughter-in-law, because the kids had to move schools after it. So my daughter-in-law is the best thing that ever happened to my son. But the best thing that ever happened to me is that next picture. Because since then, that little girl's grown just a little bit. Those are my grandchildren. Those bring me joy. I know you know what that's like. They are the reason you have children and live through the teenage years. They are our reward. And now we spoil them and let them have, yes, you go home tonight to sleep. So they are my joy. Thank you. Today I want to talk about, I love telling stories. So even, I still feel like I'm in children's ministry. I did that for years. So I still love telling stories. So just indulge me a bit, because I tell stories just a little bit different. I don't just read the scripture. I tell you the story. So this story is found in John 4, and it's about the woman at the well. Okay? There was a woman that was not quite, one of reputation. She had a very ill reputation. And she couldn't go to the well, the Jacob's well, to draw water. Now, women drew water early in the morning. But it says that she came in the 6th hour, so it was like noon, and it was very hot. It was in the heat of the day, okay? And where she knew nobody would be there. See, she was a labeled woman. And everybody knew her story. And so she couldn't come draw water when all the other women came, so she would go at noon. So imagine here she is, going up there in her own quiet way, and she sees a man at the well. Okay, now don't get offended, and the pastor will fix this after I'm gone. I'm leaving soon. I'm going to go see President Bush. He can fix it, okay? But this is what I'm imagining, all right? Here's this woman of ill reputation. But come on, ladies, she's got to have something about her. She's had 5 husbands, okay? And she's with another one that she's not married to. So she's got to have some hot stuff. Like, that's how I see it. You don't just get married. I get more women that say, do you help at all after we're healthy? Find us. There's so many. Like, I'm not looking, but I understand there's so many that can't even get one. I'm trying to get my oldest daughter married. This woman was of such, whatever she had 5 husbands, right? And when they weren't working for her, she just dumped them. That's what I figure. Because if the man dumped her, think about it, would the next man want her? Why'd that guy dump you? So I figure she's a dumpy. That's just my theory, Pastor. You can fix it. That's my theory, okay? So she knows she's pretty hot, but she needs to still do a womanly thing. They go draw water. So she goes and gets her water for the day, and she sees a man there. She goes, oh, great. First of all, let me give you a little bit of history. Men don't draw water. So why is the man at the well in the first place, okay? And now she's thinking, great. Now I got to go draw water. I'm sure he's going to hit on me. Right? I mean, he's a man. He's at the well. He knows only women go there, and he shouldn't be there. So now I've got to go up there, and, so she's thinking, oh, man. Anyway, she's got to get her water, so she goes. And she pretends he's not there, I'm sure, and just wants to do her business. And he starts talking to her. Rule number 2, men don't talk to women without their husbands present. That was another rule. Okay? And the first thing he does is says, woman. Now imagine, right, ladies, we're somewhere like a coffee shop. I'm not going to say a bar because we shouldn't be there, but let's say a coffee shop, right? And some man, just sitting there at the next table, and he goes, hey, would you get me a drink? Hey, woman, can you get me a drink? Can you imagine what you do? Hello? Really? You're asking me to get you a drink? Right? And so Jesus has no problem. He just, and she says, excuse me, but do you know who I am? And he looks at her and he says, well, if you knew who I was, it's going from bad to worse. Like, this guy has the audacity to talk to her. Secondly, now he's asking her for a drink. And now he's saying, do you know who I am? Because if you did. And she goes, well, do you know who I am? I'm a Samaritan. Not only am I a woman, I'm a Samaritan woman. You're obviously a Jew, and we have no dealings. I mean, it's, and then he says, but if you knew who I was, you would give me a drink, because the water that I can give you, you'll never thirst again. She's thinking, well, that sounds pretty good, but you don't even have, she's still all like wrapped up in all the physical, okay? And she hasn't had the revelation of who he is yet, but she suddenly says, how are you going to give me a drink? You don't even have anything to draw with. Like, you don't even have a pot. And this is where it gets really interesting. And this is what we built our whole, when we started looking at why is it that in what we do in 4 days, what you saw up there, all those couples you saw up there, by the way, had divorce papers on the table. I was just telling, because I was just reminded as I saw that woman that was quite a large woman, she lost over 100 pounds after leaving. It was just amazing to see the miracles that happened. But my husband had a very, I don't know, the word I want to use isn't the right word because it would sound rude. He just had a mind that had to have a system, okay? I don't care. If it works, use it. I don't care how it works. Don't tell me how the car works. I know it needs gas. That's it, right? As long as I put gas in it, it should run. I don't care why it's running or how it's built. Whereas my husband wants to take everything. He'd take things apart and then he'd put it back together and some things were left out. And I'd think, weren't those necessary to, still working, But he always had to figure things out. And so he says, what is it that we do over 4 days? He goes, I know God is great and God is the healer, and I know we're not that good. But these kind of results, there must be a system. And that's where we came out with, as we looked at what we were doing, the R3 factor. And that's why today we're called R3 Lifeline, Relationship Lifeline, because we really believe that we're giving people a lifeline to not drown either in their sorrow or hopelessness or not seeing healing that is possible. And the first one is reveal. You see, you cannot change or heal what you don't first reveal. And what does that mean? That's what Jesus did with that woman at the well. That's what he did. He revealed. He said to her, because he asked her, he goes, go and get your husband. And she said, I don't have a husband. He says, you're telling the truth. See, now she was revealing yesterday and her present situation, her reality. And he was able to say to her, you're telling the truth. Now we can start. Now I can reveal who I am. But see, she had to reveal yesterday, and she allowed him. She still told the truth when he said, you're right, you don't have a husband. You had 5, and the one you're with is not your husband. She became the first woman evangelist that ever lived. When he revealed that to her that day, she was able to rewrite today. She was able to rewrite her story, and she ran into town, and I want to end with this. She ran into town, and she said, I want to tell you about a man that told me all about my rocks. He revealed everything to me. And now she was no longer the woman that was labeled and hiding and not coming to the well in the morning with the other women. Now she was a woman with a story. I had 5 husbands, and the one I'm with, he told me that. He knew that. And then he gave me water that I would live and not thirst ever again. I don't need another man. I don't need number 7. See, Jesus was number 7. You know what number 7 means? A new beginning. And Jesus was the 7th man that showed up in her life and made everything new. And so he went to the R3 and he said, today you have rewritten your story. It is now your testimony. Now you get to renew tomorrow. Tomorrow you are a new person. Your decision today is to reveal your past and resolve it and not live with these rocks. And it is to rewrite today. Make it your story, not your past. Thank you for having me. Pastor, that is for you. You can exchange this at the back.
Let's give the Lord a praise for that. Wasn't that good? I'm going to ask you to stay standing. If you're here today and you don't know Jesus, you're not walking with him, or you've been there before and you're not strong with him, I want to pray with you today. Online, the Winnipeg campus as well. God's speaking to your heart, because maybe you need to step into the 3 R's here. You're saying, I'm just not walking strong with God. I want to pray with everybody. And I'm going to ask everybody, as you're standing, just repeat this after me. We're not here to embarrass you. We're not here to pull you out of the crowd and say, hey, come to the front. This is between you and God. So I'm going to pray this prayer, and I'm going to invite everybody to pray it with me. The Bible says if you speak it with your mouth and you believe it in your heart, God himself will show up in your life and change it. Pray it with me. It goes like this. Father, in Jesus' name, I ask that you forgive me. Come into my life. Be the Lord of my life and change my life. I need to be renewed. I need to be restored. I need you to be the Lord of my life. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
We hope you enjoyed this message. For more free teaching and information about The Source, please go to www.tapintothesource.com.